Hello everyone, and welcome to my author's chat of the week. And yes, it has been a couple weeks since I've done one of these, and that's because I actually was away for a number of days at Dragon Con down in the Atlanta area, and so that was a lot of fun. I was on 3 different panels, one of them representing the book talk community. That one I actually moderated, which was really cool. It was my first time moderating an event like that. It was my first time doing an interactive role play panel, which was kind of fun because I got to embody one of my book characters, and also a first time selling at that event. So I got to sell some of my books on Friday, which was a lot of fun. But still exhausted from the weekend, so if I look tired, I apologize because it has been a long weekend. I know I've had a couple days since then to try to catch up on everything. I'm definitely not caught up, but I am going to keep an eye out for my co-host this week, and when I see him up here, I will go and send him an invite and we will get going. Oh, I see him right there, so should be just momentarily if he sees the invite. And but yeah, it's been a lot of fun, and now I have to get back to real life, which is never a fun thing to do, but it is what it is. Anywho, let's see if he sees my invite, and we will get things on going. Let's see. Boom. Let's see if he sees that. Here we go. Hello, hello.
Hey, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Doing good. Writing slowly but surely this morning.
Hey, that's always a good thing to hear. And I know I had a hiatus. It felt like a hiatus earlier on this year where it was about almost 6 weeks where I wasn't writing new material, and it drove me bonkers. Hello. And so it's always nice to hear when you are able to dedicate and find the time and carve out those moments to sit down and write.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, it really is. I've had quite a few kind of dry spells, shall we say, this year with writing. Just with writing the end of trilogies is always tricky. Third book syndrome. Yeah. So finally back into it. Deadlines help. Yeah, authors naturally sort of do that between a lot of writing projects anyway, I find. At least that's what I tell myself.
No, it is true. It is definitely true. And I know this year I'll be wrapping up a series, and so the last 2 volumes of my novella series, which is my Viking fantasy for more mature readers, is with the editor, and so I'm hoping to release some back-to-back months. October and November is my goal, but we shall see. It's really tough when you get to the end of a series, and 1, to say goodbye to all those characters, and 2, just try to do your series justice, no matter how long it is.
Yeah, I used to think that when I first wrote my first book that 120,000 words was long, and then all the authors I see in fantasy world are just kind of like, well, the story needs it, so it's turned out about 400k, for example. So yeah.
Yep, exactly. You have to do right by your story. But before we get way too ahead of ourselves, I want you, as my co-host this week, to introduce yourself and what you write. So let's talk about you and your books.
Sure. Well, I'm Ben Galley. I'm originally from the UK, now lurking on the west coast of Canada. I've been writing and publishing since since 2010, since I was in my early 20s. I've been writing since I was a kid. And over the last 14 years, I've produced, I lose count, almost 20 titles across about 5 series, as well as short stories and things like that, Kickstarter projects. And yeah, basically writing is my life, being an author is my life, fantasy is my life, and yeah, can't see myself doing anything different anytime soon or ever.
Well, that's good. I think, if it doesn't matter what your interests are, and it doesn't have to be writing, but doing what you love to do is that fantastic thing, and not everybody gets that chance. And so I know I love what I do, and it's always nice to talk to other people who genuinely love what they do.
Oh, it's a passion. I have my ISBN tattooed right here from my first book. I've got books tattooed behind my ears. I've got dragons on my arm. Yeah, it is an absolute obsession, and it's an absolute honor and a constant daily surprise as well that I'm actually doing it as a job. Because it is a job, as you know, both as a lot of people know, it is a job. We work long hours and we work really hard, but it is the best job as far as I'm concerned in the world. Astronaut might be pretty close. I mean, I've always been an astronaut. But I tell you what, I'd rather be writing books than mission reports, I think.
Well, I know you mentioned that you have some 20 novels now under your namesake or pen names. I didn't actually specify that one. But let me ask you, of your various series, which one would you recommend for someone to get into your work?
That's a very good question, and one that it's not like I struggle over the answer, but it's hard to just give one. If I had to, I would say my brand new series. It's co-written with best-selling author David Estes, who is fantastic if you haven't checked him out. Super epic fantasy, gigantic, chunky series and books as well. But I've had the pleasure of writing a trilogy with him. It's called The Bloodwood Saga. It's set in an arboreal world of mile-high trees, giant hummingbirds, invading demons. It's all very fun. But that's kind of not only my latest and one of the things that I'm really proud of, but probably the deepest, most secondary world. So if you like getting lost in fantasy worlds, I always recommend that one. And the third one should be coming out next year, so it's almost finished as well. But plenty of action, plenty of mystery, lots of different characters, found family. And we kind of compare it to Venom meets Avatar. So lots of kind of weird things mapped into one. Otherwise, if you like my darker stuff, Chasing Graves is another series I'm very, very proud of. That's Egyptian flavored fantasy.
Love Egyptian. I was going to say, I at one point wanted to be an Egyptologist, and I actually have a life-size replica of Tutankhamun's sarcophagus in my living room. So anything with Egypt does, make my heart smile.
That's why I wrote it as well, because I've always had that obsession. So I extrapolated the kind of, the Egyptian obsession with death, or, general obsession with death and kind of funeral rites and the afterworld. And it's, kind of a book all about kind of death and if ghosts, walk the earth and could be, controlled and amassed. So, like treasure. So, pretty dark, pretty grim, but huge amounts of Egyptian influences in there. Yeah.
I love that. And I do see a question pop up asking, do either of us dabble in poetry? Have you ever tried that? Totally different style of writing, by the way.
Very. And even within poetry, there's so many different styles that, I barely scratched the surface of. As a kind of daily or kind of activity in general, is something I've published, no. But writing epic fantasy and being in love with Tolkien and Lord of the Rings since I was a kid, I found myself writing poems and songs and other such lyrical things into my books. So yes, but not much.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you there. When I was younger, especially dabbling with various styles of writing, I do have a couple poems that I developed, in my kind of high school, middle school era. But as far as my actual work, my young adult series, again, reminiscing with, the passion of all things fantasy, classic fantasy, and Tolkien, I do have a couple places where I put in various songs, and I think a couple of my earlier works, and but that's not my strong suit, so I leave it at that.
But I struggle with, the structure, and I feel like if there are rules, I don't know them, but do I know to break the rules? Yeah. Is that what you find as well?
Oh, yes. I'm, again, very happy to say that I am an indie author, and nothing to say with anybody hybrid or traditional, but that's just what I know and what I'm happy with right now. And because of that, it's the questions, what rules? Because now, obviously, marketability, there is that whole concept of staying within certain concepts and familiarity. It's easier to market to people. But on the other hand, because when you go indie, you don't have to be so restrained. It does allow people to push their barriers, and you see a lot wider stuff, a lot more hybridized stuff coming out now.
Yeah. I think that's amazing. I think it's been driven by, the indies as well as the readers, not necessarily getting bored what traditional publishing is putting out. It's putting out a lot of great books and fantastic in its own right. But I think a portion of readers have realized that indies kind of are messing around, blurring the lines between genres, messing around with the rules of, structure and plot and things like that. And I think there's a taste that's been developed and is, hopefully growing, that enables authors or encourages authors to go even further with that, and especially with fantasy as well. I mean, I've written some weird books in the past, mixing up all sorts of things. I mean, even Chasing Graves that I mentioned is both first and third person through a cast of characters, quite a wide cast of characters. And so I really enjoy it. And if there's marketability I'm sacrificing, then so be it, just to kind of explore that world and that story. But it is a fun time as well, especially for kind of subgenre work. And I'm really fascinated, I don't know about you, but science and fantasy and sci-fi and fantasy together. Can't wait to write something in that kind of vein.
That is very fun. I guess in some ways my young adult series does dabble with that, because I do deal with wormholes and portals and, crossing the vast vastness of space in my magical multiverse, but it's definitely a fantasy with these kind of subtle sci-fi, ideas woven in. But it's a fantasy. But yeah, anything fusion is really interesting. I think for me right now, one of the things that I'm becoming fascinated with is the concept of magitech and magitech systems, where magic fuses and powers their world's version of technology. And so that's something that I'm working on, world building a series based around something like that.
Love it. I just wrote a short story with that kind of thing in mind, where I have not quite steampunk, not quite clockwork, but kind of magitech, sort of Iron Man suits.
I like that.
Short story that will probably become a novel at some point, because I ended up going about double the word count and just entirely creating a new world that I didn't need to do. But I'm glad that I did it. Yeah.
I think that's the hard thing for me. I'm definitely a wordy person, and I get really into my characters. So short stories are hard for me, because trying to keep something very succinct, and I'm like, actually, I could tell this in like a 5-book series. Why am I just sticking with, X amount of words? But it's sometimes a good challenge to try to keep it short and sweet.
Absolutely. It's a challenge that I've been messing around with more recently. I've done a lot of short stories, but with the Kickstarters I've been doing over the last 3 years now, for one series of books that I've got, each of the Kickstarters has had an extra short story as a reward, which I'm kicking myself, or did at the start kick myself for choosing as a reward. But it has forced me and trained me and given me that practice, which is good, and I'm still getting there. But yeah, it's short for me is probably less than probably 10 or 8K, which is not short at all. Things. That's the shortest I've managed to go yet, but we'll see.
It's good, and I'm sure that your readers and your backers for your Kickstarters really enjoy having, a substantial short story to as a bonus reward. But actually, let's talk about Kickstarter for a moment, because that's something that I've done a couple of times and want to improve upon, because I think my earlier on ones, I got a little too crazy with all the levels and all the options. So I'm trying to figure out for next time how to streamline things to make it a little more user friendly, and then hopefully that means a little more approachable, because I got a little carried away.
That's it. Yeah. I mean, for me, the Kickstarters that have been successful for me, and also the ones I keep seeing being successful at the moment, streamlining is the key word. You've said it already. I mean, it's basically really, really wise and advised to kind of reduce your reward levels and the rewards in them to, 4, 5, maybe 6 at a push, something really, really simple. Have the no reward option, a cheap reward, 2 or 3 middle ones, and then maybe, very, very large, everything crammed into a reward, which I find is, surprising the amount of people that will go for that sort of thing, especially with a high price tag. Otherwise, yeah, it's all about getting the visuals, I find, as well, to make successful. Do the video. I know it sometimes sucks for other authors to get on video, and it's sometimes nerve-wracking and kind of difficult to edit as well with the technology. Yeah. Videos really, really get your passion across, the facts and the figures across as well. The algorithm likes them, Kickstarter likes them as well. And yeah, just having a very visual, clear project. It can be full of information, but just make sure it's kind of presented in a simple way where, backers or potential backers, I find this is how I always go about it, can just land on the page and go, okay, I get it. This is the product. This is what the money is going to be used for. This is the rough timescale, and these are the rewards that I like the look of. So I kind of try and follow that, those kind of guidelines. Otherwise, I think a lot of people go very, very, not too large, but pretty large with their goal, sometimes with really short timescales as well. And Kickstarters do need, not a huge amount of timescale. I wouldn't use, 40 days or anything like that. But 20 to 30 days I found works really, really well. Not too long, not too short. And then sort of aiming, enough to cover what you want to cover initially, but having a low budget so you can at least be successful. Unfortunately, I've seen a project recently that got, so close, hundreds of dollars away from their target, and unfortunately just didn't get there. So the backers that were going to be involved, and it would have been a smaller project, but at least it would have happened. So yeah, that kind of thing can sometimes be a bit sad. But again, this project, deserved it. So I think, the author's going to take them down and relaunch and retry them probably with a bigger project. So I think that's great. But yeah, those are the tricks that I've learned and seen around. But yeah, it's still tricky. It requires a lot of marketing, just like a book launch, just like any aspect that we want people to know about. Kickstarters take a lot of marketing, I found. Is that probably similar to what you found as well, Katharine?
Oh yeah. And that's the trick and challenge of marketing is how do you reach as many viewers as you can without boring the ones that are your regulars. And there are tricks, and people love to see achievements. So if you reach a goal or you have stretch goals, people love that. And people, there are the sales seekers or the deal ones and the ones that love that kind of pressure to say, oh, you have. Because I've seen some authors do very well with flash sales. So they're saying you have 24 hours or whatever, and you get a free bonus if you support during that time. And some people love that, but it all just depends on the person. Other people get stressed.
I know, but stretch goals is a really good point as well, though, I think, because a lot of people might not include them. I've seen projects launch without stretch goals or stretch goals to be announced later. And part of that is a little bit of the promise I find as well, where they're kind of saying, this is what we're going to have minimum, but imagine what we could get. And I think I did that with my second Kickstarter of this series, so 2 of 4, and we did challenge coins. And I've never ever done or kind of even had created or thought about challenge coins before. But I put that as a stretch goal, and every backer was leaving comments being like, "Come on, challenge coin," and they look great.
Okay, tell me what these. I actually don't know this one. So what is a challenge coin? What are challenge coins?
Well, this is one I get it out of the package. So it comes from the gaming world in general. So it's kind of you could see it as like a souvenir coin or kind of like a special edition kind of coin. But yeah, I had these made out of metal, and they are chunky. I think they're 2 inches and quite thick and heavy as well. I mean, you can use it as a weapon. But I had it designed with kind of the symbols of my world. Without getting too much detail, this is what you give the mages when they go insane in my world and are exiled. They get given 1 coin and their lives. But yes, I had those made, and now we're doing it for this project that we completed this year, and then next year's project as well. So I'm going to have 3 full challenge coins, and now I'm just going to get them made all the time. But that's the thing, that like exciting rewards are also key. Yeah, they're great. I'll send you the link for the company that printed them. They're called Straight.
Yes, please.
Yeah, they're amazing. But yeah, there's just those sorts of things and really, really fun rewards. I did a graphic novel years and years ago on Kickstarter, and I decided to try and make something really intriguing. And aside from kind of the standard rewards of, your name and the dedication, a signed copy. And while those are great, people do look for kind of really interesting or new things. So I offered people the chance to get drawn into the actual artwork of the comic book. So we had Mark Lawrence submitted his character, Jorg, to, that's what I call him at least, Jorg. I know people pronounce that name very differently, Jorg and things like that. But so Jorg is literally in my graphic novel lurking somewhere in the back of a tavern. And yeah, loads of people went for that reward. So things like challenge coins as well, stuff that's kind of a bit unusual. Fantastic. People go crazy for them.
I love that. And the fact, okay, so this is really cool. I love talking to people who have done or attempted to do the graphic novels, because that is, again, a very different style of telling a story. How did you enjoy working with an illustrator to create? I'm assuming you wrote the story and then you found the illustrator for that. How did that happen? How did that happen?
Very interestingly. So this was way back. I mean, this was 2014 or 15, I think I did this. So kind of, it's also something that, people have done a lot of graphic novel adaptations, but because they are quite tricky, they don't happen a huge amount, I found, in the indie world. But yeah, basically I found an artist who was up for it. He gave me a quote, and I basically tried to, create a Kickstarter that would give me the money to pay him, but also with the shipping and, do all the Kickstarter math that you need to do. And then it was kind of a launch and see. So we didn't know, he did a couple of, test artwork, some sample artworks for the Kickstarter page. So I liked his style. I knew he could do it. And it was a guy called Michael Westman. And basically we kind of just didn't really know where it was going to go. So we had all these plans and big ambitions, but then hit launch on Kickstarter, and we just didn't know whether it was going to be a go or not. But it was, and it was fantastic. It did take a while for the art to be drawn because it's a very laborious process. Of course, artists work very, very hard. It was a graphic novel adaptation of the first book in my Emaneska series, which is the 120,000 word long book. So there was a lot of me going through and editing, and the artist Michael actually read the book and then started kind of picking his own scenes, and then would send them to me as I was reducing the dialogue and some of the descriptions to kind of match with it. And so we kind of gelled pretty well. Probably got lucky in the way we did it, but it did work for us. And the Kickstarter funded, and it was basically about 9 months of solid drawing on his part, and then editing and me filling in the speech bubbles and all those sorts of things. And finding printers that could do it, which was another couple of months. So it wasn't planned. It kind of worked out pretty well. It was my first time doing it, and I'd probably do it in a bit more of a structured way, but it worked for us. It was, it's kind of, we threw something against the wall and see if it stuck, and it did.
I love that, because I have talked to a number of authors, and I'm, myself, I'll include myself, that are always interested of what would it be like to take one of your works and put it in that kind of more of a visual manner. So that is really neat that you were able to do that, figure that whole process out, even though it probably took, as long as writing some, for some people a book, but it is creating essentially a new book.
Yeah, exactly that. Yeah, 100%. If I did it again, if I had any tips, I would say reduce the book into its major scenes. Maybe try and storyboard it yourself as an author, because you obviously know the scenes that are super important. The sideways looks, the emotional moments, all these kind of like nuances that you have between your characters, which obviously art can supply, instantly in microseconds. And obviously we take, maybe 100 words to describe a scene or a tree or something. I would probably do that first, and then find an artist so they could quote better. They know that their time is going to be, or they can understand their time more accurately in the scope of the project. But I kind of want to keep going with it, and we'll see after I do these special editions and hardbacks that I'm doing and got all the other plans out of the way. Yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, that's something I want to actually talk about. Special edition is something that I'm hoping to figure out between now and this time next year, because I will have hopefully by the end of this year, again, releasing these last two novellas, I'll have 2 different complete series, and I would love to do a Kickstarter for each of them, a different Kickstarter, obviously, to release a special edition cover or a limited edition cover of those series, and, make it a lot of fun. But again, I have to find the research of like the how and, the new artists and all that kind of stuff. And that takes a lot of time.
Takes a long time, doesn't it? Yeah, it's a lot of work, especially finding the artist. Obviously, commissioning the art is expensive, and it takes a lot of time as well. It's a lot of facets, even things like, who's going to print it, end papers, what the other things I forgot what they're called. I was literally dealing with this yesterday. It's basically the color of the binding at the spine of the book itself. The type of paper, the sizes. Do you do foil, sprayed edges, printed edges? There's so many facets to a hardcover that I didn't, or a special edition hardcover that I had no idea about 4 years ago or 3 years ago. It's so exciting when you manage to get one in your hands, though. I mean, mine are right behind me in terms of the ones that I've done.
Feel free to grab one and show it. Let's see the pretty covers. We're visual people.
Let's do it. So let's do them in order. This is the Emaneska series in hardcover format, special edition.
I love it.
We didn't go for any dust jackets on this, just pure kind of naked foil. And those are the language I had to create for the book, which is great. I thought I'd gotten away with that in terms of, runes. And then I thought, well, the design needs runes, so I had to create an alphabet. Why not? And then we have Pale King's the second one, and then this one, which is brand new and being delivered in the next couple of months to backers. I know, shiny, basically, is what I wanted.
CAP Beswick just jumped on to say hi and said, I love those special editions. And glad we're talking. Hello.
Thank you very much. Yeah, honestly, another fantastic author right there. But yeah, special editions, it's the same thing that goes back to when you first publish your book and you get your first print on demand copy from KDP or Ingram Spark or both or whichever. And you hold it. And as much as you can look at a word count on a Word doc or a Pages file and see all, the big numbers there's nothing like just getting a book and just thinking, I wrote this, I created this thickness of tree and holding it in your hands. And then special editions just go way and above that. It's just, it's fantastic to see that just upgraded again into something shiny and beautiful with sprayed edges.
Yeah, highly recommend it. I would love to figure out how to do is embed, because I don't have vellum, and I know some people use vellum for this, but to embed character art or scene art into the book itself, for those special editions, because again, there's that aspect, that visual aspect, when you get one of those scenes, you're like, ooh, this is really neat. Yeah. And all the fun things you could do when you're working on, again, that extra special next level up book for your collectors, or just people who are like, I want that version.
No, it surprises me, and this is the thing you might have, seen on Kickstarter, or maybe kind of if you've backed any kind of books yourself as well, you might not actually know the book, but it looks so good. You just kind of want it, or you maybe know of it but haven't read it yet. And I found a lot of people who got into those special edition Kickstarter editions. I would say a third, maybe even a half of the people that backed the project hadn't read the book yet, which blew my mind. And then more people have come in book 2 and book 3 as well. So yeah, it's definitely kind of like a discovery platform as well, Kickstarter, which is why I love it. Yeah. Well,
and that's true, because there are definitely some people that I've been wanting their books for a while, but I have only so much money I can, spend for everybody's stuff. And I tried my best, but I can only afford so much. But when someone does release that really cool special edition, you're like, okay, let me just juggle some other stuff. Maybe I won't eat next week. I don't know. I'm going to get those books right now.
You're absolutely right, Katharine. I mean, what was it? It was Glasgow Con 3 weeks ago now. And I remember just standing at the broken binding table that they had there and just kind of hearing my wallet quietly weep, my bank account, kind of crying, because I just wanted every single one, because they put so much effort into their special edition hardcovers. And even though they're very affordable, it's still, I'm like, oh. Plus, I didn't have any kind of hold luggage on the plane back. So that would have been difficult.
That's true. I just came back from Dragon Con, and I brought my own little book haul of various books from people that I've been wanting for forever, but because I was going there to see them face to face, I was like, signed copies. That's what I'm here for.
No, it's great, isn't it? I love that. It's great that authors get to do that, both indie and traditional. I mean, obviously it's a very traditional thing when I started publishing, and I remember doing book signings and thinking, like, am I allowed to be here? It's like, is this an indie thing that I can do? And it's great that now we're seeing, audiobooks, translations, special edition, hardcovers, game adaptations as well. I've seen recently. It's amazing. Diversification.
Exactly. Absolutely and exactly. So let me ask you, because being someone that does so many Kickstarters and has so many projects in the works, you have to be planning so far ahead in order to make those happen. What is your publication schedule going forward? Do you have any hard dates? Do you have any tentative dates for your works?
I do, yeah. I mean, that's the thing. I've got probably about, I'm one of these people, which I think most authors do this, but any idea I get, no matter how small or big, goes into a notes document and a little book by my side here. So in there, I've got about, I think last count was about 150 ideas. So that's kind of my goals for the future in general. In terms of like what I'm doing next, because I can't think about that, it's too overwhelming. In terms of what's coming up next, October 15th, I've got the brand new versions of, if I can show these off.
Yes.
We were talking about genre mashes and fusion earlier. This is basically the weird book that I mentioned. This is Weird West, alternate history, fae, blood magic, bit of steampunk, and a little bit of romance going on there as well. So this is the Scarlet Star trilogy, which is just this kind of like cobbled together series that I wrote back in 2014. And it's just kind of, it's mad. It was very, very different from the Nordic fantasy and epic fantasy I started with. So seeing as it's been 10 years, I'm re-releasing that with new covers, character art, new interiors, new maps, everything, ebook, paperback, and hardback. So that's October 15th. So I'm really, really excited for that. I then have the final book in my Emaneska and Scalison Chronicles, which is kind of my big epic fantasy world that I've created, my biggest series. And so December 3rd is the date I've set for that. I will hit it because I have to. It's gonna be a rush right to the finish line. But those are the kind of firm dates that I've got for the next things that are coming out. And otherwise, next Kickstarter will probably launch in March next year, and then I should have another book coming out in the summer, which will be book 3 of the Bloodwood saga as well. So that's basically where my mind can go to right now. And then the next stage after that is kind of this open wasteland of possibility in a good way. But I know the books that I'm going to be delving into next, and they're going to be dragon-based epic fantasy with kind of a fusion-y twist again. Why not?
I love that. And that is also a fun thing, is anytime you're wrapping up one project, that opens up time to do something else. And if you're an author like myself that likes to try new things each time and not necessarily stick with the same world, it's a lot of fun to create, again, whole new worlds, whole new experiences, whole new characters, dynamics, magic systems. A lot more work, but it's a lot of fun too.
That's it. I mean, it's my favorite part of it, is world building. So I do that all day. I mean, the writing does have to happen, not unfortunately, but unfortunately. But yeah, if I could just build worlds, and then as a kind of job, that'd be even better, sort of.
I love it. You know what? I feel like talking about turning things into games. There are so many writing craft books, and I'm sure there are probably a number of like how to world build. I actually not looked into those, but I'm sure there are. What if someone invented a board game, which was a world building board game, where then authors could be behind the scenes and be like, ooh, actually, I'm going to keep this idea.
That's a very good idea, and I would keep it, Katharine, because I'm already starting to think of the things as well. But that's awesome. Yeah, a world-building game in general, I think, would be fantastic. Yeah, just if that was the actual play thing. I mean, I'm already starting to build up lit RPG and progression fantasy ideas as well. Yeah, no, I think that's a great idea.
Spread the seed and see where it sticks, and you never know what's going to grow out of it. I'm an idea person. It's hard for me to even take a fraction of the random ideas I throw out at people and make reality myself. So if you like it, just let me know when it comes out. But
oh man, we'll do. Yeah, it'll probably take me a couple of years, but I will.
Okay, so what is your favorite style of fantasy to write? Because we're talking about progression fantasy and lit RPG. You have epic fantasy. We're talking about, you had some Nordic stuff earlier on, and Egypt, and alternate history. So for me, it's always my next project. That's always my favorite thing. And I know that's a cheap cop out, but it's true. What about you? What is your thing right now that you're having a lot of fun with?
Because that's the thing. I'm not writing 2 books at the same time, but I'm editing one, and then I'm writing another one.
Oh yes, yep, exactly.
My favorite thing to write in general, I think, would be kind of this edgy, irrespective of kind of the world or the setting, kind of like mixing darkness with dark wit, and kind of I like writing fantasy that has a humorous edge to it, even in the darkest situations. I don't like going too dark, even though I have a grimdark series. It's I don't like violence for violence sake and that sort of thing. So mine is more kind of an emotional darkness. But I love writing books that are very, very fast-paced. So combining that darkness and the dark wit, so it keeps readers kind of enjoying it but are on their toes. Because I will kill off most of the main characters in a single chapter. I've done it and I will do it again. I do kind of write fast-paced, lots of high stakes, very, very deep world, alternate world fantasy. So there's lots of, even if you only touch on the world, you get the sense that you're in this complete kind of sphere, even if you don't see it, but there's a lot more out there than the kind of sphere of the story. So that's, I think I put it into my bio, emotionally impactful, emotionally impactful stories that live rent-free in your head. But I can't remember the exact words, but that's basically kind of my brand that I try and write towards. In terms of genre, thank you. Yeah, in terms of genre that I'm messing around at the moment, it's good to be writing Emaneska and doing the classic epic Nordic fantasy that I started with way back in 2010. So really enjoying that at the moment. But in terms of what I'm really excited to get into is kind of building into definitely less European, definitely less medieval fantasy. Not necessarily leaning towards different, other mythologies and things like that, and appropriating anything, but kind of creating a solitary new world that is is going to be impossible, but hopefully untraceable in terms of where it's got its kind of themes and inspirations from, and kind of mixing up the technology level. I really like the idea of kind of flintlock and Victorian, but without being a Victorian setting. So kind of mixing that in with kind of Magitech, like you mentioned, and sort of, really alternate setting. So that's my plan. That's what I'm really, really excited about with these next series that I've got. We'll see. Thank you.
Fun. I was gonna say, I bet there are a bunch of people listening who are like, I want that too, because I know I'm one of those.
That's it. It's just mixing dragons into other kind of situations. That's basically what I'm doing. But yeah, I can't wait. Yeah.
Why not? So what was it? Let me ask, what was it that got you into writing? Like, what was that spark that was, I'm going to take a story and actually write this story? Because there are a lot of people who come up with cool ideas but never make that effort, and then there's some who start making that effort but never follow through with it. So what was it that made you sit down and be like, I'm going to write a book?
Oh, it's easy. I had no friends when I was a kid. No, I mean, I jest, sort of. The initial part of it was my parents, and I have to thank them, and they are thanked all the way through my books, because they're the ones who, I think, I don't know if this is one of those false memories you get of your childhood, but I feel like I can remember my dad just coming in and being like, this is called The Hobbit, and you're really going to love it. So that was basically, a very, very classic start of reading, The Hobbit, Lord of the Rings. But then I got hugely into Grimm Brothers fairy tales, Hans Christian Andersen, Iliad and the Odyssey, Greek mythology, Norse mythology, C.S. Lewis. One of the big ones for me, kind of later on in my childhood, was Redwall, Brian Jakes' Redwall. God damn, I love them so much. I have the whole collection back in my parents' house in the UK. And so that was, I think, based on all that foundation, I read Redwall. And for me, that was the moment where, I want to do this. And so the first book I ever wrote when I was about 11 was, I think, ended up about 80,000, 90,000 words. So it was an actual book that would never see the light of day. It was a complete rip-off of Redwall. But I basically took Redwall, got rid of the mice and the squirrels and the moles, and put it in central South India, purely because I was also obsessed with David Attenborough. I was watching, documentaries about monkey groups in these old temples, and those two ideas combined, and that was my first book, called The Kanandapur Gang. It was terrible. It was written by an 11-year-old. It was terrible, and yet I had. What's that?
I said that's okay. At least you did it, and you knew you could do it.
It was terrible, and yet I had. What's that? Words, and it again took me I think a year and a bit to actually do that. But words, and it again took me I think a year and a bit to actually do that. But that was when I was kind of, I was kind of a solitary kid, a bit of a geek, a bit of a nerd.
We should have been friends when we were both younger, because everything you said, I was like, oh yeah. Even talking about supportive parents, my mom's on here, and she was like, sounds like someone I know. Thank you, Mom.
Oh, yeah. You see there, yeah. And that's the thing, we're not alone in how, authors are created. Like, our origin stories are usually kind of in the same or similar vein. And that was it. And my idea of fun, aside from playing video games, which I've always been obsessed with, it was, just sitting, even on sunny days, I can hear people out in the park playing football. I would be inside writing, curtains closed and shut, and just writing, because that was my obsession when I was a kid, and it's stayed that way, because I remember the world, the characters, once you get into them, and then just seeing where the story goes as well, and all the kind of, pitfalls and ups and downs of writing a book, I found so enjoyable. And so that's basically what got me started writing. I wrote another book about a year after that, or over the next year or two, and then that was a sequel to Kanandapur Gang, which was better, it was more fantasy, but that was also terrible. And that's when I started to really kind of understand that I wanted to be an author. Life moved in different places, and I got back to it when I was kind of 19, 20. And that's when I wrote the Emaneska series. So yeah, that's the story, basically.
That's fantastic. And yeah, we do share a lot of parallels. I know when I was younger, my sister and I, we grew up in the country, so we would go outside, play outside, come up with worlds, backstories, and eventually made what we now understand as a magical multiverse. And I always wanted to write and share those stories. And so I world built it essentially for years and years and years, but never sat down and did what you did and actually wrote it down yet. I kind of was like, I'll do it a little bit. I will be doing it. I was so confident. I was always going to do it at some point. And it did the whole life thing, weird thing, wrote a different series beforehand, published it. But now that's one of the series I'm releasing now is the one based off all those childhood characters and worlds and dreams. And that's my young adult one. And it's a lot of fun to go back and be like, well, how was I back then? But now I need to brush up maybe some of the words because I can't really, again, pretty much rip off other concepts or character names. Yeah. Had to change a few things over the years and update them. But it is fun to take something that inspired you so much as a child and then come back to it as an adult and be able to release it into the world as its new evolutionary state.
Yeah, that's amazing though, Katharine. That's really cool that you managed to take, the original world, because I don't think I could probably save the rip-off that I've got of Redwall. But that will probably stay hidden away on my hard drive. But yeah, that's really cool that you managed to do that. Yeah.
It took years. And a practice series, I call it practice series. No, my debut series to just get into the writing and figure out what my literary voice, my author's voice was going to kind of start tending to be, even though it's still, it evolves over time. It continues to do that. But, figuring it all out, those are challenges.
Yeah, it's weird, again, because I've been chasing a Scarlet Star trilogy recently. 2014 me. That's better. 2014 me. It's a marked difference between my writing style now. The bumps are gone. The plot holes are kind of semi-patched up now. But yeah, it's a real interesting thing to go back and see your writing, how it's transformed. And I think it really does. It's actually kind of a tool to improve or keep improving on your current writing as well, I think, where you come from. So that's been fun, interesting. And I literally read a word the other day, and I was like, that doesn't mean what 2014 Ben think it means at all. That's just the wrong word, and it means so. That was fun.
You need to change that one out. But that's a nice thing when you're able to have the access to your work and re-edit it and re-update periodically. And if you so choose to do it, you can. And anytime I look at my first series and I love them, and I have people reading them today, and they'll tell me all these lovely words, and I always love that. But when I go back and read them, I'm like, cringe a little bit, because the way I write now is, that much more improved. And I'm sure 10 years from now, I'll look back and be like,
Yeah. Do you ever reckon you'll reach a state where you keep getting better, but you always... Do you reckon you just kind of reach a pinnacle at some point and this is it now? I don't know. It's weird.
I like to think no. I like to think I'm going to always improve. But on the other hand, I would also love to be at the state where I'm like, I'm perfect in every way. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, that would be nice, actually. But no, this is why I can't read my books, if you're probably the same, Katharine. But the editing has been tough, but usually, that's a job that I have to do. But just flicking through some of the books to find a note or doing some sequel research, I'm just I want to change that line, but I can't.
It can be hard. It can be hard to look back. But actually, let me ask some of my regular questions that I always want to make sure I put in, because if I'm able to, depending on this app and how it's feeling that day, if I'm able to repost this on my YouTube channel, I want to make sure I include some of the basic facts, which is, where can people find and follow you outside of Book Talk? Because clearly you're here. Where else are you? Social media, newsletter? Do you have a website, that kind of thing?
I'm everywhere. Yeah, I'm on pretty much most social media platforms and other platforms. So, bengalley.com, BENGALLEY.com. That's the easiest place to find everything. You can get a free short story there. You can find all of my books and their links there as well. Otherwise, Linktree/Ben Galley as well. That's got all my social medias, my Patreon, my Discord, my website as well, and go straight to Amazon. So most of my books are exclusive with Amazon, but you can find ebooks, hardbacks, paperbacks, audiobooks, all there.
Fantastic. Yeah. Have you ever tried to be wide, or were you kind of like what I did and went to exclusive through Amazon first? How did
I was wide. Yeah, exclusivity didn't really come in until I was already kind of starting to publish at that time when Nook Press came along and Amazon saw a competitor and went, oh. So at the start, I think I only went exclusive in I want to say 16 or 17, I think, with my books. And then previously to that, they were all wide, which was good. But now I'm happy I switched.
And that's the thing is, like, I've heard, depending on the author, some people love one way, other people like the other way, and I'm kind of doing the opposite. I'm kind of switching wide now because I was exclusive. I am moving wide with a lot of my books for different reasons, but also the ability to sell directly on my website and have that capability and not necessarily ever risk getting penalized by Amazon for that. So I want to keep those options open. So that's why I'm moving to the wide route. But I also know, like I said, depending on genre and your following, the exclusive deals for authors on Amazon can be very nice.
Yeah, especially I think the exclusivity is probably a good chunk of my income, and it was working for me wide, specifically on Google. But then platforms change. New publishers are let in, new authors are let in. Things can get saturated, categories can change, algorithms can change. So yeah, it was working well up until a point, and then I thought no, but that's the beauty of being indie. You can always switch back every 90 days if you wanted to. Yeah.
It's a challenge and it takes time, but it is that, that perk of being, one of the many perks of being indie is the fact that you do have that flex in many ways, which is, again, a great thing. Exactly. But, okay, so now we know where your books are. So, yeah, you're into that. You have books and the fact that you have so many social media under your book. Do you ever do live events? Just because of coming from Dragon Con this past weekend, do you ever go to live events? Yeah. And if so, which ones do you like to go to? Because you said in the Canada area. On the East Coast.
The thing, I've moved myself kind of almost the furthest away from the events I normally or did go to. And yeah, now there's some great ones out here. Fan Expo. There's Emerald City Con as well, just over the border in Seattle. And then otherwise I just came back from Glasgow, so I did a couple of panels there, which was amazing. I did a signing next to Adrian Tchaikovsky, which blew my mind. And so I love going to the events. Obviously, I had some weird visa issues, so I got stuck in Canada for years, and there's obviously COVID. So it feels like now I'm kind of getting back into the events. I'm going to be hitting Dragon Con next year. But cons in general, anywhere where there's lots of authors and readers, reviewers and publishers, which I can chat to and sit at the bar with, and just chat books and fantasy and dragons, basically. Yeah.
Exactly. Well, if you come to Dragon Con next year, I'll make sure I see you wherever you are. It's a big event, and I love meeting people face to face. It's so much fun.
Same, yeah, it's really fun to do that, and that was all kind of Glasgow was about for me. Is catching up with people I've known digitally, people I haven't seen years physically, but also people I just never met before that I've been chatting to for almost a decade on Twitter and things like that. It's very bizarre, but I love it. It's probably the best thing is the community about being an author in general, and that's what cons are all about.
Yeah, it is so much fun. Maybe too much fun at times.
My head and my liver, and again, my bank account didn't thank me on the flight back from Glasgow.
I haven't looked. I will look tomorrow. Tomorrow's the day of the week that I look, and I'll probably be like,
no, don't look. It's just get someone else to look at it for you, and then be like, it's okay. It's not as bad as you think. Hopefully. Yeah.
Hopefully. But, okay, so let me ask, what is one thing you wish you knew at the beginning of your writing career that... there's so many things for me. It's like I've done everything wrong the first time, and I continue to do so. But that's part of the learning curve for me. But how about you? Is there anything that strikes you of like, ooh, I wish I knew this back then?
It's a very good question. I think the best answer to that is probably don't set up a kind of a brand or an author, personality with epic fantasy and epic Nordic fantasy, and then once that series is finished, immediately segue into Weird West alternate history, 1857 cowboys and guns and magic. That was probably something I love that book, and I'm glad. I wouldn't change it because that was the book I needed to write at that time. And again, it's coming back around, and it's launching in just under 3 weeks, or just over 3 weeks. And so I'm really happy I wrote it. But in terms of building a brand and building a readership and kind of not making people's heads sort of like almost twist off by the directions you suddenly take. Yeah, keeping people kind of within that brand and that loop, I think, was something I should have done, and then left this book until later on and started experimenting once I had kind of the reader base. That's probably one of the big things I would change. Otherwise, that's a good question. I'm trying to think what else. Yeah, I mean, aside from the usual grammatical and kind of technique side of questions, which you kind of just have to learn. Yeah, I think that's probably it, to be honest, because otherwise there's mistakes I made that I knew were mistakes, like I couldn't afford an editor when I first published the written because I was penniless and working in a weird kiosk in a train station, and I just couldn't afford an editor. I spent all the money on the cover design, which is probably it was a good idea, but then I've since re-edited it. But I wish I knew I was making that mistake at the time, so I wish I could change that, even though I couldn't at the time. If I could go back and change that, but yeah, it was a mistake I knew I was making, but I just wanted the book out there ASAP. And luckily, not many people realized or noticed, and I managed to change it. So
yes, and I see Atlas Creed popping in here saying a good cover will do a lot of your marketing for you, and that is true, and that's why it's very important to know the genre, subgenre, what you're trying to aim for when you do market. And going back to brand recognition, I did, like I said, I've done everything the wrong way first time. And so when I joined the Facebook, I know I created a Facebook page, but I named it after my first series.
That's a good one. Yeah, that's it.
And so as soon as I finished the first series, I was like, oh no. Yeah. So I had to do this whole rebranding and create a new page and say, if anybody want to jump to my new stuff, but I'm pretty much killing this one. So I don't know if I can say, moving it over to my authors page and going from there. And because that's a little more appropriate, because that allows me to write whatever else I want to write and not have 1,000 pages just on these sub-pocket niches. And I'm just like,
Yeah, that's a common one. I almost made the same mistake as well. I don't know why I actually didn't. I think it was just on a whim, because I don't remember going through the thought process of thinking, no, the author is the brand, not just the individual series. But yeah, I think I must have just accidentally done it. But I've done that with other platforms as well and had to rebrand. So yeah, it's one a lot of authors I've seen or know have made. So yeah, you're not alone.
Yeah, I mean, everybody's so proud of their first work or first works, and then it's hard to see beyond that because you take so much time and effort and energy putting something out, and to look at that long game right off the bat is a hard thing to do. And it's recommendable, but it is hard for anybody to starting out.
100%. Yeah, especially when you're just kind of new to the game and you have to wrap your head around the publishing, the writing, and then the publishing, and then there's this whole marketing side of things as well, which is just amorphous and never ending. So yeah, it's a lot to learn.
So much, and I'm still learning many things. And so actually you said you use Discord. I know a lot of authors are utilizing that platform, and it is the one that I'm on as a floater, but I haven't done anything with. How do you use that platform? Because I have this kind of itch in the back of my brain saying I should be utilizing it, but I only have so much time in the day, and I keep making excuses.
No, you're not wrong, because if adding another social media network demands a huge amount of time, even though you can kind of cross post things, it's something else to think about. Even before this course, I need my social media for the day, and sometimes figuring out kind of specific content for specific platforms can just triple, quadruple your time. So Discord was a big choice, and the reason and the simplest answer for why I used it is to replace Facebook, because I have a Facebook page that I've been growing for years. Over a decade and a half almost, and the algorithms just, as we all know, are awful on Facebook, especially because they want you to pay to also reach your entire audience. So most of my audience just doesn't see my posts or my content unless they come looking. So what I wanted was a place where there are no algorithms and simply just notifications to catch up on, and that's Discord. It's just it's all chronological. It's there. It's great. There's no algorithm. It's just a server. It's just a forum. So that's what I basically have been trying to do, is move a lot of people over there so I can have, even better contact with people, stay in touch, people don't miss anything. It does take a lot to set up, because you've got to set up the channels, each permissions and all the different roles for the channels and things like that. And I've just seen the questions from Atlas Creed. Absolutely. I think my newsletter, while great, and while a lot of people do, I really enjoy my newsletter, and a lot of people do prefer email, surprisingly, than social media. I don't. I hate email so much, but I like sending out my newsletters and engaging with the people that subscribe. And so I never get rid of that. But I can see that it would, or be an alternative, for other authors as well, especially starting now, because it does have that instant connection. So I kind of offer my social media, my mailing list, and my Discord sort of in this little triumvirate. For whatever people like and however people like to kind of absorb their content. And it works for me, because again, a lot of the content is shared around, and my Discord and my mailing list get to see sneak peeks a bit earlier than the general public. So I like giving something special back when I can as well. But yeah, I really enjoy it. But it took me a weekend to understand and set up, because I'd always been part of Discord. So I've got the worst chair. But yeah, I've always been a big fan of Discord in general and used it a lot. And I've been on many different servers, but that was the first time setting one up. And I was like, oh, yeah, okay, I can tell this came from the gaming crowd.
This makes sense. This has a system to the madness. I like it.
Yeah, but once you get your head around it, it's super easy to use. And you can do a lot of things with it as well. For instance, the only thing it couldn't replace in a newsletter would be, live lounges, as I call them, but, going live and having voice and video calls within Discord, which I think is great. Really easy to do as well. And you can sort of, set up sort of your top fans if you want to, and provide, secret lounges where your beta readers can hang out, for example. Yeah, it's really fun.
Yeah, I've heard some people do stuff like that, where they will break away and have the super fans, their street team, their ARC readers, and they'll manage them that way, all on that one platform, where again, not everybody has access to those, but those who are invited and are approved and all that kind of stuff can get into those hidden, I guess, lounges you call them.
I call mine lounges, but that was from, I used to do a YouTube series called The Author Lounge. So yeah, it's just, I like lounging around. I'm like part lizard. So yeah, I just always go automatically for lounge. Yeah, but no, I think it's great. What was the other thing I was going to say as well? Yeah, with the, you said something really important there. No, it's gone. Never mind. That's the beauty of live.
I'll give you a moment, and I'll actually, because the hour is racing by, my last question I always like to ask, and this is for everybody who's listening, as well as you, Ben, is if there's any topic you wanted to cover that we haven't covered, or any questions that you have that were not asked so far, this is the time to do them. So if it does pop back in your brain, you can go back to your...
no, it was just saying that was, I remember what it was. It was basically saying having those different kind of channels in your Discord was one of the reasons, because I had a Facebook group for all my street team and beta readers, but even the algorithm started interfering there as well. So it was a pain in the backside. But I have just seen a question as well that I can answer very quickly. Another one from Atlas. The Discord link is in my link tree, which is linked tr.ee/Ben Galley. If you want to check it out, just in case I don't get to you any sooner. But yeah, topics. I love topics. Topics are also a chocolate bar back in the UK, so I got distracted by thinking about those. I'm really intrigued to see, where a lot of people are kind of, or how a lot of people are doing audiobooks and translations without necessarily using a publisher or a creation house and things like that, kind of DIYing, funding it themselves and going full indie, because that's something I'd love to do. I've done kind of once before with an audiobook, but yeah, it's an exciting area that I always think it's fun to delve into.
And I can tell you that ZS Diamante, who's on here, he, for his audiobook, since he had already started building a decent platform of followers, and his book series, debut book series, has been doing very well, very well. I think he just got another award this week. Very, very well. But what he did was he funded it through a Kickstarter for the purpose was funding for your audiobooks, but like you said, with the streamlining of Kickstarters, he offered an ebook and paperback, the hardcover, the 1 and 2 bundles, and but the point was all the money was going towards
exactly
the audiobook, but people could get them in whichever format you preferred. You're just supporting his audiobook. So if you're already working on Kickstarters and looking for funding, that's a great way, because you already know the Kickstarter platform. And I've always paid out of pocket for mine up front, or I've done the split deal with one of my audiobook narrators because I do different things with different people. But I do like the idea of, if you don't have a lot of money up front, find ways to crowdsource up ahead. And since you already have fans, you know.
That's my plan. Yeah, no, I'd love to do that. I was thinking about incorporating that into my next series in general, just basically funding the launch of the series, getting people in early, or offering them a chance to get in early, and funding the audiobooks as well. So we'll see. I think Kickstarter is going to be, you know, even more of an incredible tool for authors over the next couple of years. More than it's already.
And going back for stretch goals, like the basic was, let's try to get this first audiobook out. But then if you reach different stretch goals, then you back the second one and the third one and the fourth. So he got his whole series, and I think his prequel novellas all backed from one Kickstarter. So.
Yeah, it's fantastic, isn't it? Yeah, no, good on him. And yeah, I might just get a Kickstarter tattoo as well at some point.
Hey, you never know. If you ever go to, it's rebranded now, Author Nation in Vegas. I know the Kickstarters, a lot of the big gurus on Kickstarter are there. And, you know, if you know the basics, it's nice to be able to, you know, ask, you know, the personal one-on-one questions too, and be like, hey, how can you help me with this specific thing? So. Yeah.
No, 100%. Yeah, no, I think I want an excuse to go to Vegas, so we'll see.
There you go. Amazing. It's every November.
Cool. That's great. It's still time.
There is still time. I will definitely be there again this year. I'm very excited about it. But yeah, so I guess we're rounding the end of the hour, and unless there's anything else you wanted to add on, thank you so much for joining me today and taking an hour out of your life to talk about books and ramble about things we do for a living.
No, these are the kinds of chats I like, where we just literally chat rather than, you know, very, very structured, very serious interviews. So
yeah, I don't think I could be that serious. Even in I do offer written interviews for people, especially those who aren't comfortable doing face-to-face or on this platform. Yeah. But those, I'll have a few, you know, a little more serious stuff, or maybe about the craft, but then I'll ask, like, what type of, you know, what book villain would you be? You know, you gotta have fun. Yeah, so what 100%. Book villain would you be?
Glockter. Always Glockter. Yeah, from Joe Abercrombie's books. Sandan Glockter. He is filthy and evil, and I love it. He's despicable. I wouldn't maybe take the pain that he has to suffer, but he's one of my favorite villains ever written, I think. But yeah. That's awesome. Otherwise, no, this has been really fun to chat to you, Katharine. Thank you so much for having me on as well. It's been really good.
And I will let you know again if this is able to be repurposed on YouTube, and send you the link if that is possible. And if you ever want to do another one of these again, I plan them weekly. Do try to plan them in advance, but this is part of my weekly life.
I love it. No, thank you so much. I'm honored to be here. It's been really great.
Perfect. Now I've been excited to meet you now in a pseudo face-to-face function.
Hopefully next year, it's on the next con. I'll be there.
Dragon Con 2025.
Awesome. No, yeah. Seattle next year, and well, it's only over there somewhere that way. But yeah, Seattle Worldcon next year is going to be a blast. Hopefully, we'll see.
Okay, everyone, I have to run and hear my dog pacing in the background, which is my sign. It is time to let him out the doors. But thank you again, Ben, and for everybody who's joined us today, thank you, and I will keep in touch. Happy reading, everyone.
Yeah.
Bye.